Well, I guess you're quite chuffed that she is still the yardstick in modern politics, setting the tone of this leadership debate. Do either candidate live up to the mantle?
Well, Alistair, thanks very much for having me on the show today. And as you mentioned, of course, Margaret Thatcher, her memory, her principles, ideas, certainly a figure very heavily in the Conservative Party leadership race. I think that's a very good thing because, after all, Margaret Thatcher was an incredibly successful prime minister. She won 3 general elections in a row. She was a woman of tremendous courage and principle. So it's great that the Conservative Party still looks to Margaret Thatcher, I think, for inspiration. Now, in terms of the 2 candidates that we have, both, of course, claim to be heirs to Margaret Thatcher. I would say that in the case of, Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, he's on rather dangerous ground when he claims to be the heir of Margaret Thatcher, as he did on the pages of the Telegraph a couple of days ago, because I do think that, Rishi Sunak is a sort of big spending, high-tech politician. And I think his track record is not exactly very Thatcherite. And as Chancellor, I think that economic freedom in the United Kingdom significantly declined, actually, under Sunak's chancellorship. So I don't think he has, a great claim to be an heir to Margaret Thatcher. Now, Liz Truss, on the other hand,
hang on a minute. Let me jump back in. Niall, I'm going to only because I want folk at home to get the argument clearly in chunks, and we'll come to Liz in just a moment. But on Rishi Sunak, and I've looked at it closely, and Dennis McShane, Labour, I know, but he was on making the same point, that if you look at what Margaret and Geoffrey Howe, her first Chancellor, actually did in 79, it was what Rishi Sunak is talking about right now, i.e. bear down on inflation, don't cut the taxes until we can afford it as a nation. And that's what Margaret and Nigel Lawson did in the mid to late 80s.
Well, I would say, certainly, of course, inflation was a big priority for Margaret Thatcher. And the inflation rate, of course, was around 22% in 1980. She brought that down, I think, to about 2.4% by 1986. But at the same time, she always talked about, of course, the aspiration of tax cuts. That was always her ultimate goal. And across the Atlantic, significantly, Ronald Reagan brought in huge tax cuts in the United States, which were very, very successful. Of course, he brought in a sort of 25%, tax cut in terms of the marginal personal tax rate. And so the US certainly led the way in terms of tax cutting. Margaret Thatcher's instincts were always to cut taxes. The scale, of course, of inflation back in 1980 was incredibly high. It was over double what it is today in the United Kingdom. All
right, let's turn to Liz Truss. I hope not rudely interrupted you, because I wanted to, as it were, get the Rishi Sunak arguments in a box, which you've done with great clarity. Let's move on to Liz Truss, because the other thing I was thinking when I was writing this last night, knowing I was going to be talking to you, on foreign affairs, and don't forget that she is still the Foreign Secretary, whatever the outcome of this election is going to be, it may change, but right now she's the Foreign Secretary. Margaret Thatcher told Reagan not to go wobbly on defence. She refused to bail out even Gorbachev until he'd pledged real democratic reform. No prisoners taken with Margaret. So, with that as the backdrop, your assessment of Liz Truss?
Well, I think Liz Truss has been a very impressive Foreign Secretary. She's been very tough, very robust. She's been an excellent world leader in standing up to Vladimir Putin and his barbaric and savage invasion of Ukraine. So I've been actually very impressed with Liz Truss's leadership on the world stage. She's also been very good, I think, with regard to Brexit. She has a strong track record as well in terms of delivering results with regard to with regard to free trade agreements, of course. And she has pressed very strongly as well for a US-UK free trade deal. She has, I think, become a very strong, devout Brexiteer, despite being a Remainer, of course, originally. And I would say that, Liz Truss actually has, demonstrated as Foreign Secretary a lot of Thatcher-style, grit and resolve on the world stage, which is exactly what, Britain needs. She's a very strong leader. And I think that, the enemies of the free world, certainly, the Russians and the Chinese, recognize that Liz Truss has been a very powerful adversary. And that's a very, very good thing, actually. We need to have strong British leaders. And I think that, Liz Truss certainly, she has projected a lot of sort of Thatcher-style resolve on the world stage, and that's great to see.